right. Uh, Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our weekly show. Let's chit chat with Narine Dat. Here, as you know, we have, in the past, we've had a variety of different guests. The whole purpose of the show really to kind of let our guests share, the things that they're passionate about, whether that be the arts, whether that be social issues, but whatever that is, we've had politicians as well and so on. We like to have everyday people and all of that. And the purpose really, it is a freestyle show. Today, though, is very special because we have Cameron here, who is the executive director for the food bank, Cambridge Self-Help Food Bank.
That's right.
And he's going to tell you all of that, in details and so on. I just thought it was appropriate to have Cameron here because, it is Christmas time. Christmas is coming, and usually, we do, things a little bit different Christmas time. People get excited to have dinners and all of that, special dinners, gathering, all of that. Unfortunately, we live in a world where not everybody can, kind of afford to have that special meal and all of those types of pieces. And so Cameron will take this opportunity to share how important it is to contribute. And I will explain a few pieces too, because I have some, question for you, along that way, regarding all of this as well too, because obviously the food bank is there to serve a purpose, a temporary purpose, and so on. We'll get into that a little bit more. If you happen to tune into us for the very first time, keep in mind there are 3 different ways to listen to us. You can listen to us in the regular dial. That's the radio, 102.7 CKMS FM. You can listen to us on Rogers Digital Cable for those of you who have the Rogers Digital Box. And of course, worldwide in the web, soundfm.ca. I do encourage you to share a page for those of you who are watching on Facebook. This is just an extra piece that we kind of really taken advantage of. But do share it in your groups and so on. The whole purpose, we really want to reach out to as many people as possible with our conversation. Freestyle, we're just having a chit chat. It is a little bit different than our weekly cultural show. The cultural one is obviously it's more entertaining and all of that. This one gives you a little bit more understanding as to what's happening, what's important, and all of that. So Cameron, thank you for taking the time. You made it, sir, despite the fact that it's raining out there.
Yes,
so thank you.
Just in the nick of time. Yeah.
And I've known Cameron for a while. Now, Cameron, it was fun. You have to share this before we get started. I was talking to somebody a few months ago, and they used him as an example. And they said to me, Narine, he's also just as busy as you. What they're trying to say is that you put your hands in a lot of different things because you are a community-minded man, all those kinds of things. So this show is not my show today. This is your time to kind of speak. So welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right. So we are going to get right into it. Why don't you take maybe a minute or so, a couple minutes, and let people know who you are, the kind of initiative you've involved in the past. Obviously, the first time I met Cameron was during my time at Opportunities Waterloo Region, where he was one of the board members there. I had a really good time there, by the way. That's where my social service work actually kicked off there. Thanks to Mary, by the way, who gave me that opportunity.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. So take it away, freestyle. Anything you want to share? Let people know who you are. Then we are going to get into this food bank, the purpose of it, how many people you're serving, all of those pieces.
Yeah, and interesting that you mentioned Mary, who was the executive director of Opportunities at the time, who also worked at the Cambridge Self-Help Food Bank. And
she works there right now.
She did previously, yes.
Oh, previously,
and that's a place that she spent a lot time. So it is a special place where a lot of people who engage in the community in a lot of ways have had a lot of impact. So myself, I'm just a guy. I'm just somebody in the community who just has a real bent towards social justice and towards really trying to live a life that inspires people to be compassionate and caring and just to think about others in their community. And so that's taken me in a number of directions. So you talked about kind of having your start at Opportunities Waterloo Region, and I had mine at the Working Center, which if anybody knows about social supports in our region, they tend to be the prime example that people look at with really innovative.
I want you a little bit more.
Oh, sorry.
We
yes.
want them to see you there as well. Do we have people? Yeah, fantastic. Yeah.
So really innovative and compassionate and really human-centered work, right? It's not about what kind of parameters we can put on the supports that we provide. It's how you can put yourself at service to others. And there's a line that I remember in a staff meeting once at the Working Center when Stephanie Mancini, she said, "We don't provide services. We put ourselves at service." And it was one of those things that really just changed the way that I was thinking, that it's not about, what services we have on a page that says, because often when we have a program is designed to put a box around what we do,
yes, for
right?
Sure.
And so now you're talking about eligibility, you're talking about, and in a lot of ways, it's how do we, almost how do we keep people out of that program and make it only for a very specific group of people when we look at the community and most people don't fit in those boxes and their stories are complex and everybody has, their own story and their own path. And so when we put ourselves at service to people, then instead of saying, can you fit into this box that I've created, you're saying, how can I help you with what you want to do, right? How can I help you to live a better life? How can I help you to achieve your dreams and your goals? Or how can I help you to get more involved in your community and help others as well? And so that's that, very small piece of learning has really just shifted the way that I think and the way that I try and do my work. So spent several years at the Working Center, moved on to working with the Alliance for Children and Youth and Family and Children's Services at the Family Center. And again, that was a great experience of, how do we reach out to, very diverse communities and change the way that we're operating so that people, and again, in a sense of, working at Family and Children's Services, not everybody feels comfortable engaging with Family and Children's Services.
That's correct, yeah.
So how do we change the way that we approach people and be able to build relationships? And so that was, really kind of the core of the work that I got to do there. Following that, I worked at Bridges to Belonging as the executive director there, which was, kind of a very small organization, and we made it. We went from a very small organization to a small organization, and really great learning as well, because that was an organization. At the core of what we do is working with people with developmental disabilities, just to live a good life. Again, it's not. It is complex in some of the moving pieces that people have to navigate when they want to live their dreams, especially people who face barriers that we put in place to doing that, and which is often the case for people with developmental disabilities. And we try and remove those barriers. We try and if somebody wants to get a job or a volunteer opportunity, then our role was often not. People used to think it's how do you get that person to learn to engage in that environment. Really, it's often how do you change that environment so that it makes space for those people. Right.
That's very good point. Yeah, you got a good point.
Yeah, and we have to change that. We have to change spaces because it's. We often think about when people face barriers to inclusion that it's they that need to change, and it's not. It's society that needs to change because we need to make spaces for everybody. And so often it wasn't. It wasn't about what kind of skills do that person need to develop. It's how do people see the skills in that person and then help them to bring it out, right? Sure. And a very, very different way of looking at it. And then about a year and a half ago, I had the opportunity to come to the Cambridge Self-Help Food Bank, and I grew up in Cambridge and I live in Cambridge, and so that was a real honor to get to take on this role, because it's for those who aren't familiar with it, it's just a gem of an organization, full of heart, and so it was really exciting to get to take on that role, working with and then succeeding Pat Singleton, who spent 23 years, I believe, as executive director there. Went from when she started, she was the only staff person to taking on a team when I started of about 20 people. with a wide variety of supports. Really built something almost from scratch, and it's an incredible legacy that I get to follow on. And so very lucky to be in that kind of a position. And that's sort of my professional side, and then in between, as you sort of say, kind of getting my hands in a lot of different things, and
that's fine.
Less so these days. Less so these days, just as far as the amount of time spent kind of in the roles that I'm taking right now, and having a young daughter too as well.
How old is she?
She's turning 4 next week.
Okay.
So you want to spend as much time as
maybe
possible.
She'll be watching this.
Yes,
she'll be watching this at some point.
Yeah, and so I think that's a bit of my background, and just so many ways. Last night actually was a special night. Last night we it was the Cambridge Chamber of Commerce, Cambridge Northumbries Chamber of Commerce Community Awards, and we were nominated for and won the best nonprofit, best larger nonprofit over 11 employees for the year. So that was a real a really exciting moment, because it's complex times in the social support world, sure. We've been doing a lot of work and how we again adapt the way that we operate to meet some of that complexity, but sometimes the people that make up a place like the Cambridge Self-Help Food Bank, don't often get the kind of recognition that I think that they deserve. The staff and volunteers, day in, day out. Often, I mean, we do get thanked a lot, but sure. Sometimes certainly feels it's a very, very difficult role sometimes, and they deserve a lot more credit than they receive.
All right. So my dear fellow listeners, for those of you who have just tuned in, you're listening to Let's Chit Chat with Narine Dat. Every Wednesday, we do more of a talk show style show where we bring in community-minded guests, to talk about their passion for community work, their passion to really make the world around them a better place. And that's the whole purpose of what we do here. Our guest here is Cameron. If you missed some of the pieces, I will encourage you to watch it back at the end of the show, because he shared some very interesting pieces, and his passion really for social work, allowing people to maximize their potential. And when you were working at the working center, I was, I'm not sure if you remember, it doesn't matter. Anyways, I'm not sure if it was then or not. But anyways, I did a placement there,
Okay.
Yeah. I did. Probably I was after that, because obviously after this opportunities,
right,
thing kind of went down. I had to question myself, like, what's next for you, kind of thing, right, and so on. So how did that work out for you? You work as a job developer as well, and I'm a job developer right now as well too, for a different organization. But did you enjoy that portion of it, because it gives you that opportunity to really allow people to grow, I find, like, professionally, and in some cases their first job or the first professional job and so on. So how did that?
Yeah, it's a really interesting role, because so I started out doing employment counseling, which is more that one-on-one work with the person who's doing the job searching. And then I got into doing the job developing, which is more about how do you bridge the person who's seeking a job with the employer. And often you're working with people who maybe they don't have the experience, or maybe they've been out of the workforce for some time, or there's some barriers to being successful in we say like the typical job market. So which is usually an employer puts out a job posting, they get 200 resumes. How do you how does somebody who is trying to get a start or re-enter the job force, how do they stand out among those resumes? And so the role of the job developer is to kind of have those conversations with employers about by the way, you might not see in that person's resume how they stand out, but here are the ways that they can. But you really need to understand the workplace, you really need to understand the employer, and sort of bridge that gap that divides between where people wouldn't have as easy of an entry. But it's interesting because it's in a lot of ways, the work that I got to do at Bridges to Belonging is similar in that, you know, we have somebody that we get to know, and we know the skills that they have and the talents that they have and the passion that they have. And now we get to go to bat for them and say, you know, look, you know, here's somebody who has a lot to give, and they just need a chance.
Oh, for sure.
And you know, it's pretty exciting when it happens,
Mm-hmm.
because you know, does it work every time? No,
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't. But that's always a learning experience as well. But a lot of times, you know, you get to see people who really flourish,
Mm-hmm.
and all they needed was that chance.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, the way that we typically do things, again, it's difficult for people to get those opportunities, those early opportunities, and so that's a role that I mean, I think I'm guessing you'd agree, but it's really exciting when you get to see people make that step, and then they take it on their own.
For sure, for sure. I mean, you mentioned a good piece is that sometimes people, I find that they can do the job and do it really, really well, but they're not able to shine through like a resume, for example.
Mhm.
And, you know, so if you were to look at a resume, you might, or employers might see certain pieces to be a barrier,
Mhm.
for example, maybe with no experience or limited amount of experience. And you know, whereas you have people with 5 to 6 years experience and so on. So that can be, you know, a barrier. But once people get that opportunity, you know,
Mhm.
because you know, it's a whole different ball game doing an interview with somebody and have standardized question, and you brought up something interesting about serving clients. You don't have to do a criteria system or put them and stuck them in that box kind of thing before you help them, right? And so when you go to interviews and so on, and when you have all of these standardized questions, I've seen it on both sides. I'm not sure if they're trying to make it fair, but how is that fair though if I'm not good or somebody's not good to answer question that way? They get really nervous when they see people. That could be a barrier.
Right.
You know, I've worked with somebody, by the way, very outgoing person. We have had the best time, but as soon as she stepped out of that office, she's a different person.
Right.
She's all enclosed and like she can't be in front of crowds and so on.
Yeah.
When we get back together in her office, like I've learned so much from her, very bubbly, very intelligent and so on, but it's just, we all have different barriers. So I would assume that sometimes, well, not assume, she shared with me that she gets extremely nervous, you know, when people looking at her in her eyes and or even doing a presentation and so on. So all of that. But you're right, the job developer piece is a very interesting role. I find, you know, I've learned so much, you know, working as a job developer. So thank you for sharing that. So again, for those of you who have just tuned in, we have Cameron, who's the executive director for the Cambridge Self-Help Food Bank. He's here to really talk about the organization, but we want to get to know him a little bit more. I know him really, really well, but obviously our listeners and so on, usually we take the opportunity, you know, to get to know our guests, you know, a little bit more. And then obviously, when we come back, or at least before the end of the show, he's going to share more about the purpose of the food bank, how you can get involved in terms of contributing, particularly, you know, it's coming, you know, to Christmas time now, and a lot of things, you know, we take for granted and so on, you know. I mean, one thing I can tell you that changed my life when I was working for Opportunities Waterloo Region, I actually did a lot of outreach, obviously, and I was like, in all the different communities. I discovered a lot of pieces, man, that I didn't know. Honestly, did not know exist locally here in our community. Because I grew up in a nice neighborhood and have like family support and all the basic things that we need, the kind of stuff, right? But then when reality really kicks in, when I started to do outreach and then I'm working along, and I said to myself, wow, that, you know, yeah, like simple things like homelessness and all of that is not far from home, you know, and all of this kind of stuff. I'm like, I volunteered at a food bank too. You weren't there then too. Obviously, we were promoting our program through Opportunities, our job there. So we did some work there too. And I think because of Mary's connection too, and so we were going there, and we had a lot of fun as well too. And so when I saw like people coming in and so on, and I can't wait to hear from you when we come back. People are coming, you know, and people are accessing, you know, food because they need that food to kind of carry on. And like I was kind of lost as well too, because I've never really experienced something like that. Right. And that's locally here in our community and stuff like that. And so I'm really anxious to hear more. So what we're going to do, we're going to take a quick break, but I want to definitely say hello to Donna. Thank you, Donna, for taking a sneak peek, and do share our page, Donna. You've always been supportive of my initiative and the things that I do. Like, I can always rely on these people, anything I want, I just tell them, they get it done. Somo, thank you so much for taking a sneak peek. Ben, thank you so much as well. Ben is now an international singer. He entered a competition, and now he's doing really, really well. And for those of you who are listening, on the radio, on TV, and so on, we do appreciate that. And if you have any questions or so for Cameron, regarding what he talked about just now, or regarding the his work at the food bank, you can send it to us at mcnarine@hotmail.com. But for those of you who are watching, you can just type it live, and we'll kind of see what we can do for you. Again, you're listening to Let's Chit Chat with Narine Dat. We're here with Cameron. We're going to take a quick musical break, and we're going to be right back. right, my dear fellow listeners. For those of you who have just tuned in, you're listening to Let's Chit Chat with Narine Dat. Obviously, we're here with the executive director for the Cambridge Self-Help Food Bank, Cameron. He's here to share with us the purpose of the food bank, the work it does, and all of that. But obviously, the first half hour, we took the opportunity to get to know him a little bit more. We will have to get right into talk about the Cambridge Food Bank because he has done so much stuff in the community and all of those pieces. So we would have time to kind of continue on, but very community minded, has done a lot of work. I'm aware of the work he has done and so on. And it was me who actually reached out to him because on this show, because we have this show now, we try to look out for, we try to reach out to community-minded people who share the same values as us, people who really care about the world around them, care about their community, people who are passionate about, advancing, someone else's need, all of those types of pieces. And Cameron is a perfect fit. You mentioned, though, about the award thing. I think that's important for you to mention back, because for me, the way I see it, an award highlights hard work that organization or individual kind of put in, and also it's a way to celebrate success, and I mean, I can tell you, it's the feelings is always the same. It never fades away. Anytime there's something of that kind.
I don't have as many as you have, so I know that as well.
But I can tell you, it's a beautiful thing. It is, and I wish if people can do that more. So why don't you take a minute or so to talk about that, because I think it is important for us to celebrate success as well, to let people know about those pieces, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, within kind of the social services world, there often are not, a lot of celebrations and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
We have, quite a remarkable organization and people who are just so passionate and committed about what we do. We have at the Cambridge Self-Help Food Bank about 20 staff people and 750 community volunteers every year who get involved, and another 400 or so through our food cooperative program, volunteers. And so, I mean, that's, we're talking about, well over 1,000 volunteers and staff people who just work so hard every day to make sure that people, nobody's going hungry, and that people have what they need as far as food. But it's so much more than that, because I often talk about, if we were about efficiency, we would put a drive-through window in and just hand out food hampers that way. But that's not about the efficiency. It's about relationship building. One of the things that you said earlier was that as you were getting to know some of the challenges in the community, you said that you had a strong family and connections, right? And that's something that a lot of people that we see are lacking. And sometimes when we think about when we talk about, say, for example, homelessness, usually it's not a one step from having a home to being homeless. There are a lot of things that go on in between, and the more social capital you have, the more connections that you have, and the more people who are willing to help you, the less likely you'll ever end up in a shelter. The less likely you'll ever end up at a food bank, because again, so if I don't have enough money for food tomorrow, probably my first stop is my family. And if maybe they'll help me for a little bit, and then I'll go to my friends and some connections and start to reach out. Eventually you start to spend that social capital. And I mean, that's not the path for some people. Will go directly to the food bank because they don't want to ask people who they're connected with,
and that's okay.
But the big thing that we know is that for people to be successful and to to be really resilient, it's we often talk about independence, and I prefer to talk about interdependence, because independence is a myth. This idea that you, as a human alone against the world kind of thing, that you can stand on your own. Well, we don't, because the moment that the farmer stops growing food for me, I'm in trouble. The moment that the city stops repairing the road, I'm not getting anywhere, right? I mean, there's so many ways that we rely on people throughout society and within our families and our networks. And those are just so important. And so our role at the Cambridge Self-Help Food Bank, we see it's not only about how do we get food into people's hands, but it's how do we get people connected to other people? How do we get people connected to their community, to their neighborhoods? And that is something that, I think will grow in emphasis. And it's something that's existed there for a very long time. So our food cooperative is an example where we have about 500 households who are members of the food co-op. And it's a little bit different than the typical, kind of emergency food piece that food banks do, in that it's more of an ongoing support, but it's also primarily delivered by the people who are members. And so the members of the food co-op, we ask them to volunteer at least 4 hours a month. Whether it's in the food bank, whether it's in the community in some way. Sometimes it's people are taking ESL classes. Sometimes they're taking academic upgrading. That counts too, because you are out there, you are making a difference, you are building your own skills, you're taking your life in your own hands and trying to move yourself forward, but you're giving back in some way, and that's what matters, because we know that those interactions, they start to build the social connections, they start to build the self-confidence that people have, their own skills, and that's how people become successful, right? And it may take some time, but we see it over and over as people move forward in their own life. And again, it's not because they become independent, it's because they become interdependent on other people.
I hear you. So how many people access, you may have said it, but how many people access as an average per month, let's say, or per day, or anything of that stats
so
that you want to share?
Yeah, the Cambridge Self-Help Food Bank, we serve about 1,600 families directly, and I say families, households, every month. And so that's through our kind of two main food supports, our what we call our community pantry, which is our more emergency food support, and our food cooperative. That equals about 20,000 food pickups a year. And that's sort of some of our direct service. So our food bank, we provide that direct support, and then we also do the food collection, food procurement, and distribution to other programs as well. So there are over 20 programs in Cambridge North Dumfries that we provide food to as well. So places, shelters, meal programs, community centers.
Good. This is good to know.
Yeah. So we move about 100,000 pounds of food to those programs every year as well. In addition to the 1,600 families that we're impacting every month, and that's sort of the more on the food piece, or the direct food delivery, but we do so much more than that as well. So we provide a meal once a week. We do it's called Mike's Lunch. It's a Saturday hot meal, great food. By the way, if anybody, it's an open meal, right? So anybody can come in. And
how often do you do it, you said?
So every Saturday, 11 until 1, at the food bank at 54 Ainsley Street South. We serve between 100 and 130 or so people every Saturday. And that's in partnership with a number of different volunteer groups that come in and do that. We also are putting more and more of an emphasis on nutrition and education. So we now have a full-time community nutritionist, and she and some of her team are running programs. Now we have this challenge of how can we do more in the space that we have, because our kitchen is just a hub of activity all the time. So she's running programs like Global Kitchen, where we're exploring what does healthy eating look like in different countries around the world. So people are coming in, and we sort of travel to, so, the first month that she did it, they went to India. So each Friday when people are coming in, they're going to learn 3 different recipes and learn about what healthy eating looks like in India. And then they're going to take food home for their family that they've prepared. They know how to use it now, but it's also using only food that's available at the food bank. So it's not, sometimes you'll look at a recipe and you go, okay, well, I have, 4 of the 18 things that it needs. Well, I can't really make that. No, these are the things that if you're accessing the food bank, you're gonna be able to pick them up there. And we're gonna teach you how to use it, because there's a big gap for a lot of people with foods that are available and healthy foods and whole foods, right? So we put a real push on fresh, healthy food, and more, as much as we can provide. The problem is that for a lot of people, they haven't had the experience of using it, right? Or don't know. So, if you pop a bunch of kale on the shelf and different fruits and vegetables, some of them people aren't as familiar with. They might know carrots, right? But what do you do with kale? And they're not sure. So how do you pack that in a school lunch, for example, for your child and actually have them eat it? So we do a lot of work around that. School lunches, healthy school lunches, work with more and more work with kids. We're running, kids in the kitchen programs, kids in the garden programs. And that's another aspect of what we do is local food development, because we know that, resilience when it comes to food security isn't just about like, can I go to the food bank and get food? Can you grow your own food? Can you get involved with the community in growing your own food, or in a lot of cases, growing food for the food bank? So we work in partnership to run 5 different gardens. Our biggest one is at Rare Charitable Research Reserve. We have 15,000 square feet of garden there and 15,000 square feet of orchard, which they were just planted. The trees were planted a couple of years ago, so they're just starting to make fruit for us. Oh, nice. But that's one of those gifts to future generations where, whenever you plant a tree, that's something that will continue to grow, years along.
Very smart. Yeah. So you see, you coming here really, people will be enlightened to, because they will kind of understand. Because when people think of food bank, even myself, even though I volunteer there and I get it, and I understand it, I wasn't aware of all the pieces that you talk about, the trees and all of that, right? So because when people think of food bank, you're thinking like short term, like food, you go there, you get food. So how does the process work though? So let's say somebody realize that, they have no other option now. They have already went to their friends, they already went to their families and all of that, and the only option that left now is go to the food bank. What's the process? I'm interested to hear that, because I know we talk about barriers and how challenging probably it can be to kind of go to the food bank. That alone is a difficult thing.
And the hope is that people don't feel the need to tap on everyone's shoulder before they come to the food bank, because if we can, of course there is a stigma to accessing the food bank. That's something that we need to lower, because we want people to feel comfortable coming in. And what I think surprises people often is just how welcoming and caring of an environment it is, and also what they receive too. So we had an email recently from a father who he emailed because his daughter had come to the food bank and she was really struggling with going, and you have to go, you have to do this, and eventually she did, and then kind of came out and went, oh, they were really nice, and I didn't feel like I didn't feel judged at all, and she was so surprised by the quality of food that she received, because again, we're putting that as much fresh, healthy food as possible. I think probably people are expecting that they're only going to be getting cans of soup or something like that. Well, we do have that, but we also you might be leaving with a bunch of carrots and green beans and and fresh bread and and all sorts of different things that people might not expect from a food bank, because we always think about the non-perishable food items. And that's part of our messaging, right? Because when we're doing food drives, we're always asking for non-perishable food items, because it's going to go in a bin somewhere, and by the time we get it, we probably don't want the fresh food in there. But if you're dropping off food at the food bank, please do think about fresh food. If you're making a donation, buy a bag of apples, buy a bag of carrots, and you can drop that off at the food bank.
So people can go there any day, kind of thing.
Yeah, so we're open 5 days a week. So Monday and Tuesday morning we're closed, and then on Thursdays we're open later until 6:30. So 5 days a week, and essentially people who are in need, they walk in. If it's your first time coming in, we recommend bringing ID or something that names your address, because there is a bit of an intake process. but it's pretty minimal. And so what we look at is just your residency, where it is that you're living, and we use that for your registration, as well as who's in your family. Right? Because what we provide depends on what your family looks like. Because if you're coming in as a single individual, you're going to receive a different amount or type of food than if you're coming in with 3 young children. So you're going to be walking away. Maybe you have somebody has a baby. Well, okay, well, we have diapers. We have do you need formula? Do you need And so we're going to go through that list. Do you need baby food? Do you So we make sure that people have the appropriate foods for them, as well as what are there religious dietary requirements? Well, let's help you meet those. Are you diabetic, and what does that mean? So we have all sorts of ways that we can adapt what we're giving based on the reality for that person or that family. So yeah, they come in with identification and as well as some financial information, whether it's a pay stub, whether it's something from Ontario Works, Ontario Disability, or CPP, or whatever it is. And the reason being that, of course, we do qualify that people are under LICO, low income cutoff, and but that's a pretty minimal,
that's standard,
invasive process.
For sure.
Yeah,
No,
yeah,
for sure. Those are standard normal stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I want to clarify one thing, because I know people will be watching, again and after and so on. And I'm so glad that you came, because you really hit on some pieces that even myself wasn't aware of all the pieces you mentioned about diapers if needed and so on and things of that, right? Because it's all part of the daily living thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I just want to clarify one thing, because I know when I ran for election last year, this affordability thing came up, and I mentioned, and I'm glad you came, because it's all making sense. I mentioned, because I was looking at the big picture. I mentioned that the food bank, there are pros and cons to it, because I did mention that it can create some problems too, because if people are just relying on it, and they're not really, utilizing their skills and all of that, then are we actually, are we contributing to the problem, or are we making a difference there? But I'm glad that you mentioned all the pieces. You talk about the gardening pieces. You have all of that. So that I'm glad that you mentioned about people they can volunteer, 4 hours, and it doesn't have to be a specific thing, right? It could be even strengthening their language skills and all of that. And I think what I'm trying to say is that I knew that there is more than just handing out food. And so I guess what I'm trying to say is that once we have program like this, it's making sense, right? Because the idea for the food bank, the way I see it, and correct me if I'm wrong, obviously it's there if you have that need. But let's say you found yourself job now. Let's say you lost your job and you had not a choice. You're accessing it. But let's say you have a job now. I think it is okay for you to contribute back as well, to donate and so on.
We often get that, and that's something that again people don't think much about. Is that often there will be we'll get a check. Or we'll get, someone will make a cash donation with a little note that says you were there for me, and they pay it back. And it's interesting because we often find that there's so much generosity among the people that we serve, because they they have walked that path and they know what people are going through, and are so willing to contribute when they can.
So, I mean, I spoke to a few people, and a few people will say, I know certain religious, some people who are very religious in their own way, certain so on. They do a lot of charity stuff, and I know a few people reach out to me and they're asking me, Ryan, what will be a good organization to kind of donate and all of that, right? And I did mention the Cambridge Food Bank, because it just happened to be that. I'm not sure why. I think, and it goes to show how every little bit helps, because I think the reason why I end up mentioning the food bank, I think I sent you an email about this, or a message, because you had posted something on Facebook, something, and then that was the last thing I saw, right? And then that's why I share. So how can people what's the biggest need right now? I know, obviously money always comes in handy, because then you can use it for whatever the need is. But what's your biggest need, and how people can how can we make it easy for people to contribute, whether that be food, donation and so on. Because up to last night, I was speaking to somebody, and when they saw that I put a post, they say, "Oh, Narine, thanks for the reminder there." So why don't you share that, please? Because people are watching, they're listening.
And there's so many ways to give back and contribute, and that's what's. I mean, that's one of those things that's so inspiring about being at the food bank, because you see it in so many ways. And I mean, I was surprised by how many people just pull up on their way home from the grocery store, get out of the car with 2 bags of groceries, come in and just kind of leave them there and then leave without leaving their name, or, we don't know who they are. And it happens all the time, and it's amazing. Definitely, funds is, we're often asking for donations, financial donations. It goes a long way. And most people think that, we're going to use that money to buy food because we have buying power. And we do, obviously buy lots of food. But when we can put that money into the collection of food, and it allows us to collect more. So it's, it's the gas in the truck, it's the repairs in the truck, it's the person who drives the truck, it's, and just all the operations, the more that we can do, the more we can bring in through the donation system. Food, obviously, is a big thing. And again, non-perishable. We do have a list on our website of, what are the most needed items. But that does, we also welcome those, fresh food donations. And in the summer, if you're growing your own garden, we say grow a row for the food bank, right? So that's something that a lot of people don't even think about is, you could be growing food in your backyard. We actually have a program called Seed Share. So we're not only giving out food, we're giving out seeds. And so we're trying to get people connected to the food that they're eating by growing it themselves. So giving them the tools to be able to do that. And so, imagine if everybody was growing a little garden for the food bank and what that would look like. I mean, just incredible. So, and for some people, maybe they don't have the financial means to, make a large donation. Every little bit counts. I mean, our donor base is wide, and it's it's those $25 checks at a time that often drives what we do, and 87% of what we do is fundraising and donations. So we rely heavily on that. And for some people too, where okay, so maybe you don't have the the financial capacity to buy food or make a financial donation. Can you put a box and do a collection at your workplace or at your church or at your mosque? Can you get people around you involved, right? And that's a very simple way to do it. It's not, it's not a hard thing to do. You say, let's collect food this month for the food bank, and encourage people, or be creative in how you go about doing that.
So maybe I want to say hello to people responding here. So I'm going to say hello to Davy, actually, who lives in Cambridge there. So let me see. She said. So she said, this is such a simple cause, and yes, let's get the awesomeness out and get connected. Yeah. So Davey actually is very community minded and so on. Maybe one thing I can start to do in the month of November, usually, I was born and raised in Guyana. Obviously, people do things continuously, but in the month of November, I'm not sure how it started, but more of a tradition. So everybody who is in need, will just go to the beach that day. They're just going to gather there. They will prepare and come the night before. And so everybody now will come. People want to do this good and they want to give back. So everybody will go with cash dollars, and they're just going to, so that people who are in need or they're just going to line up there, make lines, and people will just give them cash.
Wow.
Like the whole village and the whole city will just give them cash. So they're walking with lots of cash, right? And food and cooking and all of that, because they will need that food and so on. So to kind of commemorate that annual tradition that we do in Guyana, maybe it will be nice for us to start something here where we kind of make it known here too, and we kind of do it in a large scale, where we'll get people to be involved and so on, and we can maybe, and then that's going to be our way to contribute to the food bank, for example, right? And kind of do it that way, right? And right. So that way people continue on with the tradition to give, to kind of give, right?
And that's the way is you find the ways that work for you and your community, right? So and so depending on what communities you're connected with, whether it's your workplace or whether your different community groups that you're involved with. It's, what works for that group. So, sometimes we'll have, we had a child who went with their parent door to door, just knocking on the doors and saying, I'm collecting food for the food bank, right? And that's the way that they did it. Other people will do things at their workplace. Other people, we often will have, we even have right now a faith group challenge that happens every summer now, and it keeps growing in the number of congregations that are joining up. And it's a friendly challenge that they have with each other to see how many items they can collect and grow on it each year. And so it's what makes sense for your community and what makes sense for the people around you to get them involved and excited.
Thanks for mentioning that. And we do have, I'm not sure if you're aware, but we do and sometimes awareness is important too, because once people start to feel love and start to feel fulfill giving, then you continue to do it too, right? So like we do the annual Caribbean Dreams concert, we have hundreds of people coming. Maybe maybe I'll talk to the teams and so on, and then maybe people can bring a food item and so on, something like that. And then and then it, more of an awareness too, and then kind of and then hopefully more people start to do it, right?
Absolutely.
Because we have like a good chunk of people, a lot of people coming there and so on. So time goes by really fast, and I know that people like yourself, I know that 1 hour, I know that we will have to have you back at some point, because
this went quickly.
The hour goes by really fast because obviously and this is freestyle and there's so much to share, but the fact that you came here, one thing I can tell you is that people are more knowledgeable now, because I wasn't aware of all the pieces, and though I volunteer, I went there physically there, we did outreach here, and things of that kind. But obviously things have changed, and in terms of how do we make things better and all of that too. But I was excited about the community piece, because my father, he does community gardening. He's a senior, and he kind of more keep himself active and so on. So I don't do all of that, but they bring it to me, right? And I appreciate it.
Yeah.
But he said something very interesting, and maybe it's an idea that we can kind of make use of it. He says that many people are planting it for the fun of it, just so that they can come out. But he said they don't go actually read those things, right? And just stay there. So we can't let those things go in waste, right? So maybe if we find a way to even communicate, and with these farm, the people who does it, and say, what, there's a need in the community that would you mind us make find a way to, so we're not taking their stuff without them knowing, but like donate it, and we set up a day, or once a week we go collect it and so on, because I personally would have no problem drive it and take it where it needs to go, right? Just to get started, and then people can learn and understand how the process works and so on. So there's lots of opportunities, so so you come in here, you're not wasting your time at all. You keep us informed. We know that there's a need. There's no question about that. The fact that people are accessing it, the fact that you mentioned about 20,000 pounds, you said, of food per year.
We move out about almost 1 million pounds of food.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
And so definitely there is a need, and I mean it's more than just the food thing. There's a lot of opportunity for being part of community and empowering people too, because if people are taking the time to send back a check, it means that they have recognized the importance. It means that apart from them paying back it forward, they're realizing that it serves a purpose, and the fact that you came to share, we very much appreciate it. Let me see what Dave is saying here. So December is our birthday month, Narine, and for Narine and me, giving back is something I like doing, especially in this month. Well, there you go. So you're a Cambridge person, so it's an opportunity there, kind of thing. So a lot of people, like I said to you, people have their own religious beliefs and so on, from different culture, whether that be Muslim, Hindu, myself, and so on. And so people like the idea in giving back. And so I actually, in my neighborhood, there's an Indian lady. She will, she very deep in her religion, and she actually, they give cash and food and all of that. And so she will knock on my door every so often, and she will bring cash dollars for my daughter, because they believe to give stuff to the kids or girls or whatever it is, right? And so I'm thinking this is great, but then I'm also thinking that there are other people who are in need, Like, you know what I mean? Kind of thing. So how can we shift it a little bit in a different way where the people who are, where maybe I can have a conversation with her, letting her know, you know what, this is great, but maybe we'll kind of maybe give it to somebody else, or maybe we can go make arrangement and go on a Thursday or a Friday where we can give the people who can benefit the most.
And really, what what Debbie is saying is one of those ways that a lot of people like to give back is, instead of asking for gifts for their birthday, asking for donations to the food bank and that sort of way. And we see it with children. They'll do it, and it's it's amazing to see kids who are so selfless, at a young age. They're already knowing to give back, and and then sometimes we'll see. I remember we had one where it was a baby shower. So instead of asking for items for their baby, they asked for diapers, and then they donated them all to the food bank, right? And again, it's that they're saying, well, we're already blessed. We're already lucky with what we have. We don't need more, but we know that there are others out there that do. And so rather than saying, well, don't give us anything, it's, you know what, let's all contribute in a small way.
For sure. And especially Christmas time, so that's, that I think it's a good opportunity now too, because a lot of people are thinking differently now, right? To kind of give, and people who are in that need. And so we are running out of time, but it just popped into my head. How about Christmas time? Like, do you do anything specific, like for for kids and toys and all those things?
Yeah. So we do. Yes. So we will do. We're saying 800, but probably about 850 holiday hampers that we do, and those are food hampers. So it's your turkey and kind of all that stuff. We're really amazed because we have a donor who's providing us 1,000 turkeys, so we're going to cover all those. And then we're also working with the Salvation Army and the Firefighters Basket Fund in Cambridge. So people who register for the holiday hampers can register also for toys and work with the Salvation Army for those. So
Davey, I'm assuming Davey was saying is asking how about care packages, and so I guess anything that we use on a daily basis, whether that be a toothbrush or all of anything,
absolutely,
stuff like that. So for sure.
I mean, that's something. So we often talk about the food, but we also have lots of non-food items. Menstrual products is a big one. So I talked about diapers, toothbrushes, toothpaste. Some people who do a lot of business travel, they'll collect at hotels, little bottles of shampoo and things like that. Unopened, we ask for, right? Because we do need that. But absolutely, I mean, it's what do you use on a daily basis, and that might be something that people are lacking. And we also have street outreach workers who work with people who are experiencing homelessness, and for them to have things like that is really is really wonderful thing to be able to provide.
Fantastic. All right, so we are running out of time. So on behalf of myself and Cameron, we would like to take this opportunity to wish you a great today and even better tomorrow. Do join us again next week, Wednesday, from 10 a.m. until 11 a.m. And obviously on Sundays, we do have our cultural show, Caribbean Spice, from 7:30 p.m. until 8:30 p.m. So we'll see you again soon.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.